a really wonderful educator to do something called experience before information. So I'm going to ask you guys to do this little uh, self-calming exercise with me. It's just breathing. So if you are comfortable where you are, you might just close your eyes and lean back in your chair as much as you can. And I'm going to ask you to think about your breath like a roller coaster. Not that you're on a roller coaster, because that might be stress inducing, but inhaling and going up a hill. If your eyes are still open, you can do, and the little pause at the top of the breath, and exhaling and watching the roller coaster go down the hill, or the line go down, and the little pause at the base. And if you would just do that for a few breaths, just watching the breath. And as you do the next breath, if you could think about counting, just a regular count, maybe it's approximately a second, counting the number as you breathe in, and then again as you breathe out. And as you do that, we're trying to find about an equal number for the breath in and the breath out. And then I'd like you to try one more thing, and that is to lengthen the breath out by one or two more counts. And with your eyes still closed, you might just see how the tops of your shoulders are feeling and your jaw. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and open those eyes. So I am amazed at what that very small couple of minutes of doing that changes to my physical and emotional state. And so wanted to start by sharing that with you today. Hope you guys got a little sense of relaxation from that too. So resilience, what I'm going to be talking about is the ability to bounce back from stressful events, which are demands made on your resources. And the ability to keep calm and recover quickly in the face of criticism, daily hassles, and major life changes. And so, of course, everybody needs this help in being resilient. However, dealing with a chronic illness or being a caregiver also adds additional stressors to your life. Okay. So, let's see, let me see if I can go back here. So this ability to bounce back is something that's been studied quite a bit in recent years. And at Turning Point, where I work, we found that there are 10 10 qualities or 10 facets of resilience, and I'm going to be getting to those later. But first, I want to share some information about the autonomic nervous system, what happens in the brain when we experience stress, and why it is so important to recognize what's going on and try to engage this relaxation response. So this fight or flight mode that we have gets turned on very easily. And one of the old biofeedback techniques used to be a palm thermometer, or a mood ring did the same thing. It would measure the temperature of your palm. As we go into a fight or flight mode or a stressed out place, our hands and feet get cold. You may have noticed this in yourself. Our blood moves to our major muscle groups. Our blood pressure and heart rate increase. Our breathing becomes shallow and fast. Pupils dilate and saliva thickens. Now, this was very useful when we used to walk out of our cave and have to deal with a lion. However, because, even something like blood leaving the hands and feet and capillaries, if you were to get cuts, you would be much less likely to bleed out from that injury because your blood has moved to more internal muscles in the body. The saliva thickens so that we don't choke on our saliva if we're running or fighting. So very adaptive thing that our body does. However, today we rarely run into those immediate threats to our physical safety. And so this becomes somewhat of a health hazard for us in many ways, because we are going into this fight or flight, but we're engaging all these things, and yet there's nothing to physically fight, or rarely something to run from. So I want to show you a picture of the brain here. So the amygdala is that little red structure in the center, and that is the alarm bell that goes off when we are afraid. And the brain is not so good at distinguishing between something big that's happening to us or something small. So if an individual were to say something that hurts your feelings, our amygdala lights up, and we're finding more and more from functional MRIs that this is happening. We thought it was before we had those things available. But anyway, so the brain doesn't distinguish between a big fearful thing and a little fearful thing. It also doesn't distinguish very well between physical pain and emotional pain. They happen in almost the same place in the brain. The third thing, the brain doesn't distinguish very well from past events or current events. So if we're replaying something that happened last year, we are having the same reaction, or maybe even a more intense one than we had at that moment that it happened. So some pretty interesting things. Our brain is still in this sort of old mode. Our changes have happened. Our society and world has changed at a much more rapid rate than our brains have. So I wanted to also recognize how the brain has evolved over the last several million years. That purple area in the front didn't used to be there. And that is the place that puts the brakes on an angry reaction, that helps us empathize with another person, that helps us slow down and communicate. So our brain used to weigh about 1.5 pounds, and now the brain weighs 3 pounds. But the new structure is that purple area. And primates have that area also, and it isn't as well developed, but they have it also. So pretty interesting that the brain has evolved somewhat and helps us in our relationships with others. So Yeah, let me head on here. So here's what happens. The sympathetic nervous system becomes engaged when we feel pain, when we are fearful, when we feel excluded or unappreciated. And the amygdala, that little red structure, goes ding, 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 problem. The hypothalamus sends out this call for hormones, and adrenaline, cortisol, and norepinephrine flood the body and causes lots of systems in the body, our digestive tract, our immune system, to not function as well. Our hippocampus stores a memory of that event and also kind of puts brakes on it a little bit. Now, when the other system, there are these two parallel systems, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic, and this is the opposite. And these two parallel systems can be functioning at the same time, but we want to try to be in this parasympathetic nervous system, which is sometimes called rest and digest. And I don't know if you've ever had a difficult situation happen, like after you ate lunch and your stomach, it just stops working. There's like a rock of food in your stomach. So it's interesting to me that rest and digest does seem very true. When we are relaxed, our digestive system works much better, as does our endocrine system. So here's what happens if we feel loved or valued or undisturbed by a threat in our world. Oxytocin and natural opioids are released into the body. There's a sense of ease and relative calm, even bliss sometimes. Endorphins, other natural opioids, and nitric oxide combine, and they kill bacteria, relieve pain, and reduce inflammation. So I think this is especially important for people who are dealing with pain, to know that being in that parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, is going to allow your body to deal with that pain a little better, cope with that pain. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can go back here. Oh yeah, here's a drawing that really, for me, shows how similar this social pain and physical pain are, where they are located in the brain, where we feel them. And then on the right, it shows where the part in the brain that sort of mediates that helps us calm down either that physical pain or that social pain. So that area is quite overlapped. So again, important just to see that in a drawing, I think. Oh, I do want to say, I also, when I look at this, all of a sudden the opioid crisis makes a lot more sense, because those opioids that are taken are creating this sense of wellness and feeling loved and safe in the world. So interesting that we're at a time when many people are feeling not safe or not connected to other human beings, that we do have this opioid crisis. There's another way of looking at the brain that is just like taking your hand, and this center part is sort of seen as the primitive or limbic system lizard part of your brain. The next layer out is the mammal that seeks pleasure, that is drawn to food and things that look appealing and disgusted by things that do not. And the outside of the brain is the one, or the prefrontal lobe too, that is about relationships and our need for connection. When we are alone, our hormones change and we are not functioning as well in our endocrine system after a couple days alone. So the importance of social support, which you guys are all experiencing here, is crucial. If we experience chronic stress, the amygdala becomes more sensitive and the alarm bell goes off easier. Cortisol, which is one of the hormones that's released, kills cells in the hippocampus and gradually causes it to shrink. And the hippocampus helps you put things in perspective, calms down your amygdala, tells your hypothalamus to stop the stress hormones. So for someone who's experienced a lot of stress, it becomes the smaller things start that fight or flight system going more easily. So another important reason to recognize stress happening earlier and trying to cope with it. So rumination, this for me is maybe one of the more critical things. It is the tendency to repetitively think about the causes, situational factors, consequences of one's negative emotional experience. So, it comes from the word ruminant, a cow that has 4 stomachs and is going, re-chewing whatever that experience is. So, also rumination can include this worry about the future, what if scenarios. Now, it's very important for all of us to problem solve in our life, to think about finances, to plan, all of those things. However, rumination isn't an effective way to do that. It is getting into the emotional cycle of worry or fear, and it sends our body into fight or flight. So it's really important to recognize that happening. And one of the ways of doing that is to have this sort of witness out there. I saw a bumper sticker one time that said, "Don't believe everything you think." And, this witness who says, what am I thinking right now? And is that helping me or harming me? So, I love this Mark Twain quote. I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. And great sense of humor there with that idea of ruminating about the future and what if, what if, what if. So all this so far has been pretty stressful news in itself, to know how the body goes into fight or flight. One neuroscientist says, your brain is like Teflon for the good things that happen to you and like Velcro for the bad. Those stick in the brain. The brain has this negativity bias built in because our ancestors, the ones that survived, were the ones that were very vigilant and looking out for danger all the time, not the ones that were gazing up at the clouds seeing animals or whatever. So, but the good news is neuroscience has discovered the brain is highly plastic, and throughout our lifespan. There have even been studies with people over 65, and they see new neural pathways, new cell growth can happen, especially in people who work on self-calming and meditation. And so pretty exciting to know that, because I don't know about you guys, but when I went to school, I was taught, oh, you have so many brain cells, they're going to die off through your life, and you're going to have dementia, and that's it, you know. So interesting to know that that's not the case. And what this also means is that even habitual thought patterns of negativity or behaviors that are not helpful to us can be reversed, can be changed. There was an article I read recently that probably 40% of our behavior and thought patterns are things that are outside of our life circumstances, are outside of our genetic and family of origin upbringing, that influences us highly about our thinking processes and how we see the world. So anyways, 40% is quite a bit, and we can do a lot to enhance how we view the world. So there's a lot of little writing on this, but I want to draw your attention to that wheel more towards the center. And through looking at resilient people who recover from very difficult situations, these are the 10 characteristics, the 10 facets that are there. And again, these can be learned. They're not ones that are just, you're either an optimistic person or you're not. Optimistic thinking can be trained in ourselves. Also, these lists always scare me of like 10 things, oh my gosh, I'm already doing these 10 other things over here to be a better person or to eat better or whatever. So I like to say, as soon as I show this slide, working on one of these facets increases resilience. It's not like you have to be a superstar in all of them. So it's kind of great to look at that. And, social support is a big one, which again, you guys are enhancing by being at this conference. So I do have handouts of these, which I'm going to give out at my later session, but even if you can't come to that and you want a copy of this, it's really nice to post somewhere, the bright colors, and also just a reminder of, like, on a daily basis, what can you do that's going to be fill your bucket a little bit? What can you do that's going to enhance your well-being today? So self-calming is on that, one of those facets, and I think one of the most important ones, because on a daily basis our negative emotions get triggered by being hurt or frustrated or dealing with insurance, whatever it might be that triggers our fight or flight system. So what we did a moment ago with just breathing for a few minutes can do so much for calming the body down. Also, if sometimes breathing doesn't feel like the right thing to do, daydreaming often has the same response in the body of thinking about a fond memory. And our brains, again, want to go to the things that are wrong, to start fixing. That inner limbic brain wants to say, what are the dangers? What do I need to be anticipating? But if we're able to do that relaxation and engage our parasympathetic system, we are going to think better, we're going to relate to other people, we're going to feel better. So important to do that. Mindfulness, closing the eyes to check in with sensations and emotions in your own body. It's another way of engaging that self-calming. Mindfulness can also include attention to the 5 senses. So even with your eyes open, noticing, the colors in the room, the sound outside of chairs going by on a cart, just noticing and thinking, what are my 5 senses? Am I hot or cold? Can I feel the texture of something on my skin? So those things also just settle the body and calm the body. Past, present, and future states. I say this because there's some evidence that reliving things from the past encourages depression. There's not much we can do about things that have happened and I'm talking about a negative situation, not the daydreaming good thing that sends us into calming behaviors. There's also living in the future, thinking about the future sends us into an anxious state. That what if this happens? What if this happens? So the present is where we can find the most calm state in our body. Daily meditation practices are wonderful. They're the ones that for people who are able to meditate 30 minutes a day, that could be divided into 2 or 3 sessions. They're the ones that they're seeing the most brain change in, where there's the prefrontal lobe is increasing in density. So the place we feel happy or well or safe is activated. Now, not everybody can fit that into their life. So just like a while ago, people were saying, oh, you have to exercise for 30 minutes a day and your heart rate has to be up. No, that is no longer seen as true. Just accelerating the heart rate for a short time is even seen to have benefits. And self-calming for short times is seen to have benefits to us also. So again, I want to say that even these little steps are important. So, emotional expressiveness. I want to do a little work here on this one or a little exercise on this one. I don't know if anybody saw the movie Inside Out. It was an animated cartoon supposedly for children, but it was a wonderful exploration, and it sort of had this message that if you try to repress certain emotions, you can't function. You have to have all of them working together in order to, or all of them recognized in order to be a healthy person. So these are the 7 basic emotions that are identified by a man that's at Stanford who has looked at different cultures and what emotions exist across cultures. So anger, sadness, grief, fear, disgust, love, and joy. And he says, well, someone will come up with another emotion and he'll say, well, that's a combination of blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So interesting that these are universal. And so with difficult emotions, again, this brain of ours likes to hang on to them, likes to dwell on them, and that sends our body into fight or flight. So what we want to do is be able to recognize, label, and feel that emotion, and then move on. And with positive emotions, we want to try to stay with them longer if possible. So I am going to ask you guys to, again, do a little eyes closed exercise. And I'd like you to think about a difficult emotion that may have come up for you in the last few days. And I'm going to name a few. It could be any of these: anger, sadness, grief, fear, disgust. Could be others, hurt. Your feelings are hurt by something that happens. It could be guilt. So I'd like you to just recognize that emotion for a moment. And I'd like you to let go of the story of how that happened, how that emotion came to be, and just go to the feeling. And if you can, I'd like you to give it a color and a shape. And as you look at it, that color or shape might start changing. And if the story comes up about the emotion, let that go and just come back to the pure emotion itself and how it felt to you. And then I'd like you to go ahead and let that emotion go and take a big breath in and open your eyes. So I don't know if that worked at all for you, but it's worked for me a few times when I've, gotten mad at my husband because I didn't feel he was listening to me. So the other thing that's important as you figure these things out is communicating emotions with other people. And I anger is often an emotion we experience with our family members. And what I find is even more useful than saying I'm angry is what is behind that. Like, for instance, my feeling like my husband is not listening to me. There's a deep hurt behind that of, do you not care about what I'm feeling or thinking about? Do you not value me as a person? And so if I'm able to say that in a way that's not like accusatory, but wow, I'm feeling really hurt that you didn't hear me talking about my experience yesterday, because I feel like I have this deep down fear that maybe you don't value who I am. And of course, instead of me saying, I'm really angry because you didn't listen to me, that is more likely to bring about a response that is, oh, of course I care. And I heard this one part, and I was kind of stressed out about my job. Can you tell me again? Because I really do want to hear this. So you're much more likely in those vulnerable emotions being expressed to get a connection with somebody rather than the disconnect and the escalation of a conflict. I also want to look at a positive emotion for a moment, because Rick Hanson, who's one of my favorite authors about neuropsychology, he talks about, he has this acronym called HEAL, HEAL, and it is have a positive experience, enhance it, absorb it into the body, and sometimes link it to a not so positive one. So he says these are the ways that we're going to actually change the neural structures in our brain besides meditation and self-calming activities. So he wrote an excellent book called Hardwiring Happiness that isn't too terribly hard to understand. Some of the writers in neuropsychology are just, I wouldn't recommend them because no one can understand them except other neuropsychologists. But anyways, this idea of staying with positive emotions is not very common to us. We want to stay with the negative ones and figure them out and be vigilant, and our brain wants to go that direction, that negativity bias in the brain. So if we are able to Let's do this exercise again with a positive emotion. So close your eyes and think about the last few days in a positive experience. And it could have been delight at falling into bed at night so tired, or perhaps a conversation with someone, or seeing the sunlight on the inner harbor here. Whatever that might be for you, just bringing that to mind and going back to that freshness of it, and maybe checking in with those 5 senses as you experience that. What were you seeing? What were you feeling in your body or on your skin? What were you hearing at the time, if you can remember? Was there a scent or a smell or taste associated with it? And I'd like you to just keep that in your mind, even when your mind wanders, of coming back to that memory. And so right now we're doing the enriching process of staying with it for 15 or 20 seconds. And then let's go on to the absorbing it. So I'd like you to see that being absorbed into your body. So a couple visuals might be that it's a jewel you're placing in your heart with this memory in it. Or it might be a sense of maybe golden dust sifting down from the brain towards the heart. Or it might be, if you're more of a kinesthetic person, it might be like this wonderful salve that you're putting on your skin with this memory. And just let that feeling sink into you as you sink into the memory of it. Good. And then when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes, take a big breath in. So, emotional expressiveness is important for our own awareness and well-being, and journaling is often a really useful thing to do about emotions also. But then that second part of being able to express those things. And I and many of the people I work with chronic illness have some sort of gratitude practice, because how do you do that switch from all the things that are difficult and challenging and recognize the valuable and wonderful experiences in life? And it's not about having rose-colored glasses on. It is building resilience so you can deal with all those challenges even better. There's a phrase called neurotic stupidity that happens when we're under chronic stress, where we become much less able to problem solve, to focus and pick up information in our immediate environment. And that happens when we're under that stress over a long period. So, this non-judgmental self-talk is another one of the facets of resilience, and one I think our society has a really high expectation of us being perfect. And so I think if your family of origin had very critical parenting, or you're an oldest child, or whatever it might be, that we might even have a little more of that perfectionist tendency going on. So, again, this external witness who is able to say, what am I thinking about right now, and is that a useful thought to me? And if it's a worry about something I have to do later, maybe I can jot it down and let it go. Bedtime is a really hard time for many people with rumination, and so being able to, okay, I'm going to write that down and think about it tomorrow, but right now I'm going to take a few deep breaths or whatever, use music, whatever might help me find sleep. So quieting the inner critic and perfectionist tendencies, and in its place, trying to develop this encouraging voice that provides support and understanding. It's almost like the best parent in ourselves. How do we bring that out? And I've started doing my self-talk out loud when I have to drive about 45 minutes to and from work. And it's a very wonderful time in the car. Nobody knows I'm not on the phone. So it's a great time to be able to say, wow, you know what, that was a really difficult situation, and it may not have gone perfectly, but you handled it really well. Or, you know, I want to just recognize some of your strengths right now. And it's great to do out loud, because it's you know, it's real easy to slide back into that, oh yeah, but you know what, this other thing didn't go good. Maybe that went okay, but hey, let's not get too cheerful here. So anyways, being able to be your own kind of life coach who's there with you and ride alongside you for all the amazing things you do accomplish daily in your life. Social support. You know, I'm I bet many of you have heard about those studies where people who have pets or people who have strong support systems recover from hospital stays much more quickly than people who don't. And so that support system around us is crucial. I also think the last one on here about not losing your sense of humor or playfulness, no matter how difficult things get around us, we still need to honor and respect that side of ourselves. And being able to laugh, whether it's at a comedian or ourselves or a joke or to make someone else laugh, is a wonderful gift we give each other. Also, the gift of being a good listener ourselves, whether we're empathizing and providing eye contact to another person, that nourishes us as well as that person. What a gift when we feel a friend is just with us at every moment of what we're saying and listening at a very deep and empathic and non-judgmental level. So the 10 facets of resilience we looked at, but just again, I want to say that increasing just one facet, maybe the one that is easiest to think about or access, is going to increase your resilience overall. So I never want to stress people out or guilt trip them about, oh my gosh, here's this list, start working now. Yeah. So here's a summary of we can influence our autonomic nervous system. We have those two parallel systems, the parasympathetic, which is the calm, the rest and digest. We have the sympathetic, kind of not so well named because it is not sympathetic to us. It sends us into fight or flight and causes inflammation to increase in the body, causes pain to increase, our immune system shuts down, and that is a place where our other systems in the body don't work as well because our energy is all going to that fight or flight and getting us ready to fight the tiger that is not there. And in turn, why this is important to be able to get to this self-calming, relaxed state, resilient state, is that not only does it influence our mood, it influences the physical systems in the body and our interactions with each other. The third point I just want to reiterate is that our brains are so highly plastic that we're able to now see with functional MRIs that what happens when people are able to engage self-calming behaviors, engage with our support system, remember a beautiful experience, that all of those things are going to cause the frontal lobes in the body to, if we do that on a regular basis, to grow, and that plasticity is important for us because the other one is some degradation that happens in our brain and causes us to respond even more negatively to the fight or flight situations that happen, to the triggers that happen around us. And finally, the really important part today, I think, is that resilience can be learned by increasing just one facet. And, there's so much information out for people today about, how to live well in the world. But this is even things we could start teaching grade schoolers, how to self-calm, how to build resilience. So pretty important point there. So I have a little bit of time that I can take any comments or questions you guys might have.
Questions? Did you have a slide on the 10 points
Yes.
of resilience? Could you just put that up
Yes.
again? Thank you.
Uh-huh. And, oops, there it went. I also have a handout of this if you would like a copy.
I was late to the party here, but as I sit here with my two children on their cell phones, have you participated? I just did that spit study, and I can't talk. My mouth is like. Have you done any research yourself or know about cell phones and neuropsychology?
Oh, yeah.
I've read a couple of articles that just scared the mess out of me.
Yeah.
And as a former educator, anyway, you know where I'm going with this.
Yes. And what I can say is, there's sort of this illusion. I have not done any research on this myself, and I have read a couple things that are about that even though we have this experience that it's connecting us to the world in many ways, there often is more isolation because of when you're with another human being and there's eye contact and there's a head nodding as someone's talking, it is this bodily experience that doesn't happen so much, with a like thing. So it's an interesting thing. Now, in many ways, there has been the argument that, yeah, but I wouldn't be connected at all if I didn't have this device that allows me to interact with others. It does also take us out of the present, into this virtual world somewhere else. So we miss opportunities. The first time I saw a couple walking along and they were both on their cell phones but holding hands, and it was like, well, do they even feel that touch? Are they even present there? So yeah, and the whole idea of multitasking is being shown to be not possible. Our brain can't do two tasks at the same time. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a scary thing. Yeah. Let's see.
Was there some?
I had one too. She's got.
Hi. Thank you very much for all of your comments. I can easily see that there could be like two broad categories of people who listen to your talk. Some that are all in and say yes, I'm going to try to engage and try some of these things, and others who say, I don't know if that's going to work or it's not going to work for me. For people who fall into that second category, do you have a suggestion on how to get started? Like what's the easiest place to start, or the one place that might get people convinced that maybe some of this is going to help?
Those little exercises that are just about deep breathing, I think often people have this experience after doing that of like, oh my gosh, my shoulders just fell away from my earlobes, or I just relaxed my jaw for the first time today. Some people that I meet are so much in that fight or flight mode that they can't sit down and relax. And with those people, I've been able to say, which may not always work for individuals with FOP, but if you exercise, if you get out and take a walk, your body will start to relax because some of those endorphins are released by exercise. So that allows people. Also, the other thing, there's some fun things on this list, like the ability to self-replenish. Do the things that you enjoy, whether that's drawing, listening to music that you love, all of those things that engage the mind and keep us away from ruminating. Those are such important things. So I think those are a couple of the directions that would go. Thanks. Yeah.
So I have a question about, okay. So you're talking about, just taking a moment to take a breath. So I just feel like I'm going all the time. And like, if you were to do that, if you were to do that, like how long, like I'd be like, okay, I did it twice, I'm moving on. Like what's a good amount of time to like, is it 10 minutes? Does it have to be 10 minutes? I mean, what, to have an impact?
Yeah.
I just shared way too much.
No. I think probably people could have guessed that about how busy your life was. But I think, first of all, those little pauses are important. Like I now use a red light as a time to breathe, And I didn't used to. I used to be like, I'm going to be late. How long? This is the longest light in town, And instead, now I'm like, oh my gosh, opportunity here. Research is showing people who are able to meditate 30 minutes a day are the ones where they're seeing structural brain changes. So, it's sort of getting to that habitual place. Now, I'm dedicated to meditation, and I probably get to my morning 20-minute one 4 or 5 days out of the week. So again, I have to not be a perfectionist who says, you only meditated 4 or 5. I meditated 4 or 5 days in this busy life. Congratulations, Susan. So yeah.
That's good. Other questions?
This woman had a question in the red. Yeah.
I just want to say I really appreciate one of the things that you talked about up front, which is that people experience both pain and social or emotional pain, physical pain, the same way, which I had never heard that ever before.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's processed the same way by the individual, that it is affects the same part of the brain, and that the same part of the brain is included in the recovery, and that when you, I certainly have always heard that when you have physical pain that you're in fear for some reason, that you go into fight or flight, but I didn't realize that could happen emotionally and socially too.
Yeah.
And personally for me, that's a big learning, so thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, the first time I heard that, I was shocked too. And I included that slide because of that, because it's like, look at this visibly, what we see with a functional MRI with physical pain and emotional pain. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question. So many of our members of our community are in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. So would you consider even just getting out? So there's someone in our community, she posts on Facebook all the time, Nancy Sandos, she's one of our founders. She is out, she lives in Michigan with tons of snow. Every single day she is out with her dog, and she is walking that dog in her wheelchair. So with the same impact, even though she's moving in a wheelchair, is that still going to have the same impact for her as exercise and self-care would?
It's sort of like you modify to do whatever you
Right.
can. And yes, I would say not only is she out there in the wheelchair moving, but she's also with her dog, social
Right.
support, and sunlight has a big impact on us. And even on a cloudy day, it is brighter outside than it is in this room, so
Right.
that is important for serotonin in the brain gets triggered when we're out in that sunlight. So yeah, that's a great thing, great
That's a great
practice.
idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
That's good. Other questions? Okay. Well, Susan's going to be doing a couple other sessions this afternoon, so if you want to dive deeper in with her, you'll have a great opportunity to do that. Thank you for making the trip from
Thank
Kansas
you.
City.
Thank
So
you
very
very
good.
much, you guys.